So I'm just going to speak for a few moments. So I've got some notes to make sure I don't ramble. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the interoperability track. So my job over the next few minutes is to try to give you an essence of the discussions that went on in the planning of this track. So there were some in-depth discussions over many months, and I want to convey that to you because hopefully it gives you an idea about the bigger picture and how all the different sessions fit into that. So our starting point for the discussions was the MyData declaration, and using MyData as very clear our starting point to understand what does interoperability mean for MyData. I hate these things, I'm sorry. And here's the visualization of the MyData ecosystem. And at the very highest level, interoperability, I think, has to be about how do we make these roles and these interactions work together in a universally open way without relying on proprietary technologies. And I invite all the other speakers to contradict that definition. There are lots of different definitions, but that's one of the definitions that we can think about. And what we have to do is recognize that within that context, there are roles that various actors can take. Actors can take a number of different roles. There are interfaces between those roles, and there is the data that then flows through those interfaces. And all those three areas are critically important for interoperability. Now, what's very important for the MyData movement is that we don't try and reinvent the wheel. We have to go out and look at what's already out there to see what we can use. And I'm going to present just two models to you. Now, those models between them are in no way comprehensive, but they give you some idea about what the core dimensions of this discussion need to be. So the first model is a government model from the European Union. And it's got these four areas. Technical interoperability, and we're going to talk more about that in this session, so I'm not going to talk about that, but I think it's fairly obvious that you really need to think about this technically. It then talks about semantic interoperability, and this is a very important area, but it's one of the major weaknesses of this framework, because in the definition here, it talks about semantics, which is about the meaning of data, and then talks about commonly agreed data formats, which is syntactics. And I'm going to show you a little bit more on that in the next slide. So while this is a very important starting point within Europe, you can see that already there are people here who are trying to reinvent the wheel and they're not using the knowledge which is already out there. One of the major strengths of this model is about organizational interoperability. They recognize that this is about people, about groups of people, and groups of people working in partnership. And many of the other models fail to recognize that. They take an overly legalistic or technical view. And the last point is then on legal interoperability. Very understandably, this framework has at its core an assumption of a common conceptual understanding about what that is, because it's within Europe. And the challenge for MyData is how do we think about those legal implications across multiple jurisdictions. The next model is a model from academia, from academics who have studied how business systems work. And they've got a ladder of interoperability. And this is a model that Jeff Revel, who's going to speak after me, shared at the last conference. So I'm just going to tee this up. The words on the right-hand side are my words, just to summarize it very quickly. So at the bottom, we have no interoperability whatsoever. And then we move up until we have the highest level at the top there. At these levels in yellow, this is where we're talking about common interfaces and data structures, some of the most basic things that engineers will start to do to share data. As we move into semantic and the pragmatic layers, we're thinking about making sure that the meaning within that data is consistent and that we're applying consistent methods. And at the top, this is a system design level where we have a shared understanding about what the rules are and the roles are, and that the system can evolve and maintain its interoperability. I think this brings us to one of the key challenges of MyData, and Yogi touched on this at the beginning. And it's this contrast between making it right and making it happen. If we focus just on the top layer and design in our minds what the ideal system would look like in 10 years' time, we'll never make anything happen. If we focus on the bottom levels, just using the tools we have available now, we will never create something which is greater than the sum of its parts. And so I think our challenge when we think about interoperability is to have a view of where we're going so that we're thinking about interoperability by design. We're making sure that we're using the tools that are available to us now and carefully thinking about the new tools that we specify and design going forward. So take a little step back then in terms of the track overall. What we're going to do in this session is we've got a strong focus on those technical and legal aspects. And then after that, at lunchtime, then the session from CITRA around identity management. In the afternoon today, there's an opportunity to see interoperability running in the wild in the area of consent. And so real demos and real progress, which has been made over the 3 years of the MyData movement. And that's a really nice area because there's a strong evolution over the last 3 years that you'll be able to see. On Thursday morning, we have a session on semantics, and Jeff's going to touch on that next. And then all day on Friday, Mark is hosting a session around interoperability and decentralization. So there's a lot of identity work going on there. So if you're interested in that area, that's going to be a great session for you to go to. So just before I close, I've been asked by the semantic team who are speaking on Wednesday morning, those of you who have an interest in semantics, whether that's semantics data structures or the semantic web, we can have that discussion at dinner. If you want to join us for dinner tonight at Manala, then we're keen that we have a focused discussion about semantics. And that's me.